Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
As we head into a weekend, we have so much to chew on just from Thursday when you have Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States, and the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Folks on the right, where's Joe? Where's Joe been? Is he in the basement? President Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris appearing at a joint event yesterday to talk about their work so far on lowering the cost of prescription drugs. So you have that event. Governor Westmore from Maryland was there as well. It really felt like a campaign rally. At the end of the day, I guess you could say it was. Nonetheless, you have what we saw and took from that event, and then the rollout today, by the way, of Vice President Kamala Harris's economic vision for her presidency. And then you have the Trump press conference that he held in New Jersey at his golf course. When you pair the two against the other, yesterday was the culmination of what America's choices are. You may disagree on policy if you'd like with the conversation being had yesterday between Vice President Kamala Harris, President Biden, Governor Westmore, and those who are working to lower the cost of prescription drugs through initiatives in the executive branch and the federal government. You can disagree with Kamala Harris's economic vision if you'd like. But when you pair what we saw yesterday from that joint event with whatever that was that Donald Trump did, another attempt at a press conference, and I'm not his advisor, I would tell him to stop doing those. In fact, maybe what the Trump-Walz campaign need to do is find a basement for Donald Trump. Because every time he speaks, every time he goes out, it doesn't matter. Prepared remarks, that man can't stay on a teleprompter. He refuses to stay on a teleprompter. We've known this now since 2015. And I think American voters have finally worn tired of the shtick. It's like anything else. A good TV show run in modern day America, I mean, if you get past 6 seasons, you've done something. We're now on season 9 of Celebrity Apprentice White House Edition. And the ratings are clearly down. He's not drawing the crowds he used to. He's not polling like he used to. I think this hand to heaven, this could be the last season of Celebrity Apprentice White House Edition. Now, Celebrity Apprentice Sentencing and Jailing Edition, I might tune in for. And we do have that coming up at some point in October. Nonetheless, I just found that yesterday's 2 events give quite the disparity in choices for the American voter. You have sanity versus kindly unstable. We'll put it that way. Just to be kind. That's as good as I can do. Here, I can do this in about 2 minutes. America has a choice between this.
We finally addressed the long-standing issue that for years was one of the biggest challenges on this subject, which was that Medicare was prohibited by law from negotiating lower drug prices. And those costs then got passed on to our seniors, but not anymore. 2 years ago, we gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for the first time in history. And here is why that matters. It is nearly impossible for a patient to negotiate lower prices by themselves. Just think about that. Somebody who needs the medication, who may be suffering from a serious illness, that they would buy themselves being able to negotiate against a big drug company to lower their prices is virtually impossible. It's one person against a huge corporation. But Medicare represents more than 65 million people. And so Medicare has collective bargaining power. And now Medicare can use that power to go toe-to-toe with Big Pharma and negotiate lower drug prices. Thank you, Joe.
So you have that from one party offering you their option for the presidency, and then you have this.
She cast the votes. She's trying to blame Biden, as you know. So it was Biden, but I'm going to do a better job. But it was her. And if she wants to do a better job, she's still got 5 months left, right? But she can't do a better job because she doesn't know how to. And she's of a place in life where she wouldn't know what a better job is.
What? You have Donald Trump giving speeches on the economy, his economic vision, that go something like this.
Now, this is a little bit different day because this isn't around. We're talking about a thing called the economy. They wanted to do a speech on the economy. A lot of people are very devastated by what's happened with inflation and all of the other things. So we're doing this as a intellectual speech. You're all intellectuals today. Today we're doing it, and we're doing it right now, and it's very important.
Was the prompter not working? I mean, he was stalling for something. I mean, was this on the teleprompter?
Nearly 4 years, Kamala has crackled as the American economy has burned. What happened to her laugh? I haven't heard that laugh in about a week. That's why they keep her off the stage. That's why she's disappeared. That's the laugh of a crazy person, I will tell you, if you haven't known it. It's a crazy. She's crazy. They told her, don't laugh, don't laugh. No, it's her. No, her laugh is career-threatening. They said don't laugh. She hasn't laughed. She doesn't laugh anymore. It's smart, but someday it's going to come out. That's the laugh of a person with some big problems.
Again, that was 2 days ago, Trump giving a speech on his economic vision versus what he perceived to be the Harris-Walz economic vision, which, by the way, is rolling out this morning. We'll go over that in just a little bit. I did I not say this a few days ago? I think the game plan, the strategy is to let Donald be Donald and just keep doing your thing. Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, occasionally Joe Biden, now coming out to do stump speeches as well. And let the American people see their choice. Economics policy commentator Catherine Rampell on CNN after Donald Trump gave his economic speech 2 days ago.
I don't know what I watched, to be honest. It was just sort of a meandering, incoherent ball of lies and numbers pulled out of thin air. That's when he remembered to talk about the economy, and he had to remind himself several times throughout the speech that he was supposed to be talking about the economy.
Like they put it in the teleprompter.
Right.
Talk
Before
about the economy.
Then he decided to go off on a tangent about like tampons or crime in San Francisco. I'm not making these things up. You can look at the transcripts.
So when he actually was talking about the economy, Catherine Rampell, quick to point out the lies.
He was just making stuff up. I mean, there are too many things to fact check, but I can go through a few that I jotted down while I was watching it. He talked about how there was a war on American energy, which is not true. Nearly every form of energy production is at or recently touched a record high. Oil, gas, solar, wind, battery production, etc. He said bacon prices have gone up 4 or 5 times what they used to be. Not true. They're like $1 more than they were when he left office. He talked about deporting immigrants and how that would help with inflation. It would probably raise inflation. He talked about crime going up. Crime is actually going down. The murder rates are on track this year to be at or below what they were every year of the Trump presidency. He talked about where are the jobs. In fact, we've had record job growth, among other things. So it was just like, I don't know if that stuff was in the teleprompter or, was beeping around in his head somewhere and it just came out his mouth. But It was not the most coherent speech.
Well, that's what we've gotten used to since 2015 or so. Let Donald be Donald. And then he went out yesterday and did a press conference and said mathematically impossible things like,
Virtually 100% of the net job creation in the last year has gone to migrants. You know that?
What?
Most of the job creation has gone to migrants. In fact, I've heard that substantially more than beyond the number of 100%. It's a much higher number than that. But
not sure how you can have more than 100% of something tangible, but I'm telling you, the campaign for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, the strategy just needs to be let Donald be Donald and we'll do our thing. Because when you let Donald be Donald,
and you're not going to be allowed, you're all going to be thrown into a communist system. It's a communist system. You're going to be thrown into a system where everybody gets health care.
Whoa, everybody gets health care? That sounds terrible. That sounds awful. Let Donald be Donald.
People very angry at her. I think I'm entitled to personal attacks. I don't have a lot of respect for her. I don't have a lot of respect for her intelligence. And I think she'll be a terrible president. And I think it's very important that we win. And whether the personal attacks are good, bad, I mean, she certainly attacks me personally. She actually called me weird. He's weird. It was just a soundbite. And she called J.D. and I weird. He's not weird. He was a great student at Yale. He went to Ohio State, graduated in 2 years, at the top of his class, and all of these different things. And we have this guy that's running a very failed state, who's had a terrible career. I mean, you have him saying they're weird. No, he's a weird guy, and she's weird in her policy.
The man who bankrupted 4 companies a grand total of 6 times and had to be bailed out by network television to play a role on a reality TV show wants to tell us what success is. I'm telling you, the strategy just needs to be let Donald be Donald.
So I don't think so. I don't think people know who she is yet. Because really people didn't know. You can ask the man on the street. I saw it on one of the shows today. They asked the man on the street, what's the last name of Kamala? Nobody knew. It's Harris. Nobody knew the last name. I don't even use it because nobody knows who I'm talking about. People don't know who she is.
Speaking of the name and the pronunciation part, Nancy Mace really stepped in it. When we come back, I want to play some of that audio because it is deliciously cringe-worthy. Incidentally, I've decided if Donald Trump can't say Kamala correctly, then I'm not going to say Don Old correctly. The Ron Show back after this on America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn. By the way, I woke up this morning to a PayPal notification. I got a donation. Thanks, Calvin. I appreciate that. If you would like to kind of help fuel the show, I mean, it could be as much as, a coffee at a Dunkin'. That's fine. Listen, every little bit counts. This entire show is an out-of-pocket expense for me. But I enjoy doing it, obviously, where I wouldn't wake up 5 days a week to do it before heading off to my other work as a real estate agent. RonShowATL.com if you'd like to chip in, help the show out. We are growing. We're now in the Progressive Voices weekday lineup, 7 to 8 p.m., America One Radio, 9 to 10 a.m. and 5 to 6 p.m. And then we podcast as well. We do have a weekend version of the show that I believe airs at 10 a.m. on Saturday mornings on Progressive Voices via TuneIn as well. Help this show grow, and I'll just thank you for that. RonShowATL.com. Yesterday, Nancy Mace appeared on CNN with a panel, Abby Phillips, Professor Michael Eric Dyson, he's a professor at Vanderbilt University, Keith Boykin, who is a political commentator and co-founder of the National Black Justice Coalition. And those two, the latter two, really had to take Representative Mace to task for being unable to pronounce the vice president's name correctly.
Kamala's.
You had it right. You almost got it.
I will say Kamala's name any way that I want to.
No.
But Kamala's.
Mispronounced her and you also misjudged her.
I just did, and I'll do it again.
Mispronouncing her name.
That's
a refusal to acknowledge her humanity. If I purposely mispronounced your name, that would not be appropriate.
Policies.
So when things had a chance to cool down just a little bit, Michael Eric Dyson, again, the Vanderbilt University professor, wanted to go back and revisit Nancy Mace's disrespecting of Vice President Kamala Harris's name pronunciation.
Because this Congresswoman is a wonderful human being, but when you disrespect Kamala Harris by saying you will call her whatever you want, I know you don't intend it to be that way. That's the history and legacy of white disregard for the humanity of black people.
Oh, so now you're calling me racist.
I didn't say. I just said you weren't a
BS.
racist.
That is complete.
No, you don't have to intend racism to accomplish
you are
it.
intending that
your
I am
disrespect
racist,
of Kamala
and
Harris
that is
part and parcel of a
offensive.
tradition of disrespect.
It's offensive,
Congresswoman,
and it's
why can't you just?
offensive.
I'm not calling you a racist. I'm saying what the practice is
You
racist.
are. You absolutely are.
The practice is
Let me get in here.
No, what's disgusting is your disrespect of her.
Professor.
This gentleman said,
I
didn't know her name. He's trying to do
is
it.
her disrespect of women. She doesn't know what a woman is. And if 25 years ago,
White women don't have the ability to tell black women who paid the price of blood to make this country what it is, to tell them they're not real women.
25
They
years
care
ago,
for your babies
25 years ago,
respected
I
your
became
humanity.
the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina. I
So call her
fought my
name
way
right.
through it.
So pronounce her name
blood,
right.
sweat,
Let
and
me
tears.
actually
So pronounce her name
and
right.
Kamala Harris, if
Kamala.
I
You said
I
this
will
before.
say
you Nancy
any way that I
Nancy.
want.
It's
Come on,
Kamala.
it's
You're
Kamala.
doing this
You
on
disrespect-
purpose,
I am
That's
not.
disrespectful.
Just a second.
If-
You can't expect people to
If
respect
a
your
man put
service
on
if
a
you don't
skirt and
respect
walked that
hers.
stage 25 years ago, she
You're a
would have
white
said
woman
she would have
disrespecting a
taken
black
that
woman. That is
achievement away from
problematic.
women.
Professor
That's
Dyson, let me get in
disgusting.
here because I want to
That's
play
disgusting.
one more bit from.
Before we go letting Abby do her one more bit, if you're going to sit here and tout your educational acumen being the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, how about showing your alma mater some fucking respect and knowing that you are mispronouncing on purpose the Vice President of the United States, the second in command of our military, for crying out loud. You respect the office enough to pronounce the person who occupies it, their name correctly. I mean, I just thought it was hilarious that Nancy Mace was offended at the insinuation that her actions in mispronouncing Kamala Harris's name were racist. She then said, well, are you calling me a racist? No, we're saying what you're doing is racist. Not saying you are a racist, but what you're doing right now is racist. She got offended by that, but doesn't see the offense in mispronouncing Kamala Harris's name. Now, given the opportunity to clean up this show of a performance on CNN, she chose not to. Nancy Mace, gonna Nancy Mace.
Trump injecting Vice President Harris's race and then suggesting that she's not actually black. Why is he doing that? Should he stop?
Well, I mean,
Yes or no?
I didn't hear him say it. I didn't hear what he said about her race. I am not going to weigh in on her race. As a woman,
He did say it.
Okay, well, as a
He
woman,
definitely said it.
I want
She
to weigh
turned
in.
black, he said. He said she was raised Indian. Now she was Indian, all he knew. Now she
Well,
turned
she's a
black.
mixed race, She's a mixed race.
He said that to the National Association of Black Journalists.
Right.
He went to, and he said at the same event where he said he'd done more for black people than any president in history.
I guess here's the thing.
When he was president, wages for women were better than they've been in a long time. Wages for blacks were better
The
than they've
lowest
been in a
black
long time.
unemployment rate in
He
history.
did.
It
He
happened
did a
under
lot
Joe
of
Biden.
good. He did a lot of
Congresswoman,
good
let me just finish this
for
to both
people
of you.
from all walks of the
This
country.
doesn't take that much courage, honestly, to just say that was out of bounds.
Right?
I don't know what he said. I didn't see
He
the
said
Come on,
that she
come on.
turned black. He questioned whether she was really black. I don't think that's that hard to say.
Right.
That's out of bounds. Can you say that?
Right.
I mean, I didn't say it, and I would not
just
say
say
it.
yes.
Is it
Just
wrong?
say yes.
Is it
Just
wrong?
say yes.
I just
Just
Guys,
say
we-
yes.
we
Then
are-
they connect that
we
to your
are-
inability to
I'm not-
pronounce her name.
we are
Now
out of
it's
time.
it's a very
We are out of time.
It's a cult. They won't say anything
I
that
am
goes
not in
against
a
the cult.
cult. Are you
Yes, you
kidding
are.
me?
You are a
My
cult
friend,
Are you
member.
kidding
My
me?
friend,
I have
we
a
are
diverse
out of
If you
district
won't
of
speak
William
out
Bryan.
against the
I
cult
am
member, you're a
Say her
cult.
name.
Cult
Man.
leader is
Do it
Donald
beyond.
Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but if you're afraid to say water is wet because your leader will come down on you for disagreeing with his assumption that water ain't wet, how is that not cult-like behavior? How feckless, how weak did Nancy Mace look yesterday? And objectively racist. Also, can I just point out, Representative Nancy Mace got her black women mixed up. I mean, I guess if she assumes that Vice President Kamala Harris is black, she got her black women mixed up. She was mixing up Kamala Harris with Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson when she was going with the doesn't know what a woman is thing. Is it easy for Nancy Mace to mix her black women up? MAGA Nation and Nancy Mace, et cetera, and so on, they will point to that horrific display and Donald Trump's horrific press conference and his erratic and inane and off-topic speech and tell you that that's the mainstream media working against him and them and conservatism, that they're pushing communism, Marxism, down America's throats. Nancy Mace didn't have to go to CNN. She didn't have to say any of the things she did. She didn't have to continually and decidedly mispronounce Kamala. She just kept doing it. And I'll tell you why she kept doing it. Because there is a mindset within the MAGA movement to own the libs. Oh, yeah. I mean, that is a driving force behind MAGA culture, to own the libs, continue insulting them just because it gets under our skin. And if it teeters on racism, so be it. And if they call you out on that, get offended that they're calling you racist, because you're not a racist. Even though you might be doing racist things, that doesn't make you a racist. Back after this, The Ron Show, America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
Anyone who's listened to this show long enough knows that I've been saying for quite a while, Joe Biden, God love him, should have all along been a one-term president. That he would be looked back on historically as the pleasant old guy who planted seeds that would sprout trees for which he would never live to enjoy the shade of. I happen to think he's actually planted trees, period, that he will see the shade of and get to enjoy the fruits of, but that he's actually done so in a magnanimous and even in a nonpartisan way. I also said that here recently, he would be feted at the Democratic National Convention in a way that will not only, again, redefine his presidency, not that it needs redefining, it just needs to be viewed at from a different lens by the American people. We've seen his poll numbers actually increase since he stepped aside to let Kamala Harris be the presumptive and now near official nominee of the Democratic Party. I think his poll numbers are actually going to grow again after the Democratic National Convention. And I'll point out that he and Vice President Harris did a joint appearance yesterday and gave us a little taste of what I think that fetting is going to look like and how it's going to play out, what it'll look like, what it'll sound like. Here's the first little clip.
And of course, I could speak all afternoon about the person that I am standing on this stage with. President Joe Biden. And he's going to speak in a minute, but there's a lot of love in this room for our president. And I think it's for many, many reasons, including few leaders in our nation have done more on so many issues, including to expand access to affordable health care than Joe Biden. And today we take the next step, thank you, Joe, forward in our fight.
I mean, get used to that, because that is going to be the Democratic National Convention for at least 2 or 3 of the nights of the convention. By the way, you know who doesn't say thank you, Joe, enough? How about Republicans that get 85% of the benefit of climate law that some of them still hate? Christy Schwartz at the Georgia Recorder reports that a new tally shows that the overwhelming number of jobs and projects funded by the Inflation Reduction Act go to conservative states that back Donald Trump. Thank you, Joe. Here, let me give you a little taste of this article. Ajulo Otho started solar and storage company Innerwealth Solutions 7 years ago to get small solar projects on farmland and other places in rural communities in the Southeast where money is tight and the phrase green economy is rarely spoken. In just the last year, Otho said the amount of solar her company has developed went from 2 megawatts of power to 25, an increase of 1,150%. Oh, there's some Trump math. Because of the Inflation Reduction Act, the massive climate and economic development enacted in 2022. What the Inflation Reduction Act allows us now to do is for everyday people to start to take advantage of this technology, said Otho, a longtime lawyer in North Carolina's solar industry and the president of the Black Owners of Solar Services. The IRA is the Biden administration's signature climate law. The historic act is the most aggressive climate policy in U.S. history, rolling out billions in tax breaks and other incentives with the goal of cutting economy-wide carbon emissions 40% by the year 2030. Every congressional Republican voted against the bill, arguing it was nothing more than handouts to prop up climate and social justice programs. Some on the extreme right continue to argue that climate change is a hoax. But now some GOP House members who voted against the IRA are urging their leader to consider saving key provisions of it. Again, this is reporting from Christy Swartz, appearing in the Georgia Recorder, and I'll, of course, include this in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. In fact, it is the red states that overwhelmingly have benefited from the federal government's infusion of clean energy money, according to a report released by E2, a national nonpartisan group of more than 10,000 business leaders that advocates for a cleaner economy and environment. Friday marks 2 years since Biden inked his signature, she writes, on the IRA. Companies have announced roughly 330 clean energy and vehicle projects since that time. Efforts that could create 109,278 jobs and bring in a whopping $126 billion in private investments if completed, according to the E2 report. E2's report breaks down IRA-boosted projects by state, sector, and industry, as well as by congressional district. It found that nearly 60% of the announced projects, representing 85% of the investments and 68% of the jobs, are in Republican congressional districts. Although Ohio Representative Marcy Kaptur, a Democrat, boasts the largest number of projects, 8 in her district, the next 7 congressional districts with the most IRA-subsidized projects are all represented by Republicans. In Georgia, the Carolinas, Nevada, and Oklahoma. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. President Joe Biden's joint appearance with Kamala Harris, the vice president, yesterday wasn't about green energy or manufacturing, however. It was about prescription drug prices, lowering them, and their work to continue doing so into her administration. She unrolled her economic vision earlier today. We'll dive into that in just a little bit, but first I want you to hear some of her and his remarks on prescription drug prices and their efforts to combat cost.
We believe deeply every senior in our nation should be able to live with security, stability, and dignity. And so in the United States of America, no senior should have to choose between either filling their prescription or paying their rent. That's the subject of today. Because we know for far too long, far too many of our seniors have struggled to afford their medication. And as a result, seniors have been forced to spend their time trying to figure out how they are going to be able to fill a prescription like insulin based on the doctor's prescription, which is about saving their life, or whether they'd have to ration their pills to be able to make it stretch through a month. And why, we all know, but let's ask, why are prescription drugs so expensive? I will tell you. Well, one big reason is for years, Big Pharma has often inflated the price of life-saving medications, often charging many times what it would cost to make just to increase their profits. And millions of Americans have suffered as a result. My entire career, I have worked to hold bad actors accountable and lower the cost of prescription drugs. As Attorney General of California, I took on pharmaceutical companies for deceptive marketing and illegally inflating the cost of drugs, and we won billions of dollars. As a United States Senator, I fought to pass laws that would make health care more affordable and accessible for all Americans. And as Vice President, together with Joe Biden, our president, we finally addressed the long-standing issue that for years was one of the biggest challenges on this subject, which was that Medicare was prohibited by law from negotiating lower drug prices. And those costs then got passed on to our seniors, but not anymore. Two years ago, we gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices for the first time in history. And here is why that matters. It is nearly impossible for a patient to negotiate lower prices by themselves. Just think about that. Somebody who needs the medication, who may be suffering from a serious illness, that they would by themselves be able to negotiate against a big drug company to lower their prices is virtually impossible. It's one person against a huge corporation. But Medicare represents more than 65 million people. And so Medicare has collective bargaining power. And now Medicare can use that power to go toe-to-toe with Big Pharma and negotiate lower drug prices. Thank you, Joe.
Can I just say, by the way, in that simplified explanation of how it works to collectively bargain, she also makes the case for unions, for collective bargaining for employees, too. I mean, she doesn't spell that out or connect the dots, but that's how that works, too. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe.
And this is to the benefit of not only tens of millions of people on Medicare, but also millions of Americans on Medicare who have long-term disabilities. And understand, as a result of our negotiations, the government will also pay less than for prescription drugs. And think about what that means in terms of helping taxpayers save money, whether or not they take these medications. So all of this is to say, 2 years ago as Vice President, I was proud to cast the tie-breaking vote that sent the bill that gave Medicare the power to negotiate and let it get to the president's desk. And I was proud when our president, Joe Biden, signed that bill into law. In the 2 years since, we've been using this new power to lower the price of life-saving medications. And now to announce the result of those negotiations, it is my eternal and great, great, great honor, I have to tell you, to serve with this most extraordinary human being and American and leader, our President, Joe Biden.
Thank you, Kamala. Well, I love you guys, too. I've been waiting for this moment for a long, long time. First time I sponsored a bill to let Medicare negotiate the price of drugs was in 1973 as a freshman senator with a guy named Frank Church from the state of Idaho. Folks, I have an incredible partner. The progress we made, she's going to make one hell of a president. And Judy, thank you for sharing your story. It's really one for far too many Americans. People like my dad used to lay in bed at night when they lost his insurance as the company he worked for, staring at the ceiling, literally, and you've all experienced, you know people who have experienced this, wondering what in God's name happened if my wife gets breast cancer, or if I get sick, or my children get seriously ill. What happens? What in God's name, how can we pay for the drugs, prescription drugs? I'm serious, these are the discussions. You know it. Do we have enough insurance? Can we afford the medical bills? We'll have to sell the house to get a second mortgage. There are discussions that took place in my house and your house. Kamala and I both get it. We know it isn't just about health care. It's about your dignity. No, it's about your dignity. It's about peace of mind. It's about security. It's about taking care of your family. It's about giving folks just a little bit more breathing room. That's all. Look, I believe that health care should be a right, not a privilege in America.
The horrors, right?
You're all going to be thrown into a communist system. It's a communist system. You're going to be thrown into a system where everybody gets health care.
Oh, make it stop. Folks, we're heading into the Democratic National Convention. The Harris-Walz campaign has wind in their sails. They're already polling ahead of Donald Trump nationally, ahead in all but one of the 7 swing states in recent polling, and they haven't even had the convention yet. Now listen, everybody talks about the Harris honeymoon. We're in a Harris honeymoon. But what if that's actually just the appetizer and the main course is the convention? I said when I was making the case for Biden stepping aside and someone else stepping in that there were opportunities still on the calendar to boost poll numbers. Presidential debate, vice presidential debate, Democratic convention. Also, of course, the actual stepping aside part and then the Biden address from the Oval Office added to that. But I definitely said presidential debate, vice presidential debate, Democratic National Convention, an opportunity to show our cards, what we offer, the the discrepancies between the choices. And we haven't even had the 2 debates in the convention yet. And already Harris and Walz are polling ahead of Trump and Vance. I'm not saying get cocky. I'm not saying let your foot off the gas. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying for the first time in this cycle, things look and feel pretty good. There are going to be things they're going to throw at us. They're going to focus on Kamala coming from San Francisco. They're going to focus on Tim Walz and nitpick about. They're going to take the confusion that exists within the military. And listen, I am the grandson and the nephew of folks who served in the Army. Nitpicking about rank and what, trust me, it is confusing as all get out. When you get a rank and then you retire at a different rank, they're going to try and make some hay out of that, just knowing that you and I are confused by that stuff very easily. They're going to try and sully the 24-year record of Tim Walz in the National Guard. We've seen that. It ain't working, but we've seen that. From a guy who was in the Marines for 4 years, commend him for his service, and then left to work for a hedge fund. Tim Walz served in the National Guard for 24 years while being a school teacher, and they're going to nitpick about that. Let them. Let them be them. Let us be us, and let the American people see the differences. This is The Ron Show. Back after this, America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Final few minutes of The Ron Show. Speaking of a military service and deciding to nitpick about that, the folks at the Lincoln Project rolled out a 60-second ad yesterday on social media. And this was before he made comments about congressional and presidential medals, which I'll get to in just a little bit. Here is this commercial, though.
Donald Trump is a draft dodger, a coward.
I had deferments because of college, like a lot of people did. Numerous deferments because of college.
When 58,000 men gave their lives in Vietnam, Trump was the spoiled rich kid who faked bone spurs.
I had a foot thing, and I had deferment for that.
He mocked men who fought, bragging that cruising New York for sex and avoiding STDs was his own Vietnam.
It is your personal Vietnam, isn't it?
It is my personal
It is. You've said that many
I feel
times.
like a great and very brave soldier.
Trump called veterans suckers and losers. He mocked POW John McCain.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
Donald Trump, a coward, a criminal.
I always wanted to get the Purple Heart. This was much easier.
Stand up for America.
And when we fight, we win!
All right, pretty effective. And again, this was before Donald Trump made these comments at his press conference yesterday about military medals.
I have to say, Miriam, I watched Sheldon sitting so proud in the White House when we gave Miriam the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That's the highest award you can get as a civilian. It's the equivalent of the Congressional Medal of Honor, but civilian version. It's actually much better because everyone gets the Congressional Medal of Honor. That's soldiers. They're either in very bad shape because they've been hit so many times by bullets, or they're dead. She gets it, and she's a healthy, beautiful woman. It's very... And they're rated equal.
So the folks at Vote Vets tweeted that and said, it isn't a one-off insult of our troops and our veterans. It started when he got out of Vietnam by lying about bone spurs, continued on when he tried to kick veteran vendors off of Fifth Avenue, insulted John McCain, insulted Gold Star families, called our fallen suckers and losers, refused to go on a military cemetery, told the military to stop having wounded warriors perform at ceremonies because, quote, nobody wants to see that. It isn't just that Donald Trump doesn't respect veterans and their sacrifice. It's that Donald Trump hates veterans and their sacrifice because he looks so small in comparison to them. Okay, so this morning we're getting some driplets of details of the Kamala Harris economic vision. Megan Casellas from CNBC giving us a little sneak peek of that.
Good morning, Steve. It's a big plan, so we now have the full details on Harris's economic agenda. It's focused in 4 parts on taxes, healthcare, housing, and food. On the tax front, just this hour, we're learning Harris is calling to restore the child tax credit and to expand it to provide up to $6,000 for families with kids under 1. She also wants to expand the earned income tax credit and reduce taxes on health insurance premiums. On healthcare, she wants to cap the cost of insulin at $35 and cap prescription drug costs at $2,000 for everyone, not just seniors. She's also vowing to increase competition in the pharmaceutical industry and to cancel medical debt for millions of people. On housing, she wants to use tax credits to incentivize construction of 3 million homes in her first term and provide up to $25,000 in down payment assistance for first-time buyers. She also wants to ban corporate price gouging in the grocery industry. So clearly here, guys, this is a left-leaning populist agenda that expands on and actually takes further some of President Biden's policies. It'll be celebrated by progressives, but it has already earned some criticism from some economists who compare it to price controls and who say it would exacerbate supply issues, especially in food and in housing. And for Trump's part, he's offering some of his own ideas this week, including cutting electricity and energy costs by half within a year by drilling for more oil. And he wants to permanently extend his 2017 tax cuts and cut regulation while imposing that minimum 10% tariff on all imports. Again here, of course, economists have concerns. The tax cuts would dramatically increase the debt, while tariffs would drive up prices. But clearly there's still a long way to go before any of this becomes reality. It does show us, though, the priorities that each candidate is carrying into November.
So Kamala Harris wants to boost competition in the meat processing industry. That is huge. That is almost monopolistic at this point in this country. She wants to boost competition in the pharmaceutical industry, which, again, fairly monopolistic. More competition brings down prices. She wants to combat price gouging, not profiting, price gouging. Who could be against that, except the price gougers? She wants to give tax credits for builders of first-time homes that are specifically made for first-time home buyers. I said this months ago. The candidate who is talking about housing in this presidential cycle is the candidate that's going to hit the sweet spot, I think, the most. Housing was the biggest, in my mind, issue not being discussed, and here she is, not just taking Biden's cue, but going further with it. I can also appreciate the down payment assistance of $25,000 for first-time homebuyers, although we got to figure out a way that doesn't get buried into the cost of the home, so that just doesn't get pocketed by the seller or their agent. But that's another matter for another day. You hear the music, my show's done. Have a great weekend. Back Monday on America One Radio and Progressive Voices. Have a good one.